Thank you, Dr. Kaminsky, for that kind introduction. I'd also like to thank the Center for Research and Ingredient Safety for inviting me to speak today. My name is Asa Waldstein, and during this two-day symposium, presentations will cover the legal, regulatory, and many therapeutic aspects of CBD. So for my talk today, I'll be reviewing the CBD marketplace from a consumer demand perspective. And this is designed to kick off the symposium by providing foundational insights about the hemp-CBD marketplace and its consumers. We do invite questions, so we do ask that you submit them through the Q&A tab on the top or bottom of your screen. Okay, so really quickly about me. I'm a longtime dietary supplement and hemp manufacturer and marketer, and I do invite everyone, if you're interested in learning more about me or my background, connect with me on LinkedIn. I did want to quickly mention, however, APA. For those of you who may not know, APA is the American Herbal Products Association, one of the top trade groups for the dietary supplement and cannabis industries. I'm a board member of APA, and I do chair their very fun and very dynamic cannabis committee. Okay, so the 2018 Farm Bill, we love it. It federally legalized the growing of registered hemp, whereas the growing of marijuana still, as we know, remains federally illegal. So interestingly, hemp and marijuana, they come from the same plant, but they're differentiated by their THC level. Anything over 0.3% is considered marijuana and is a controlled substance, and anything under this amount is considered hemp. So there are different cultivars which enhance factors such as cannabinoid levels. You may see a high THC or high CBD cultivar, again, for example. It is worth pointing out that hemp is also grown for fiber and hemp seed oil, to name just a few of the other uses of this wonderful plant. All right, so a consumer may see different terminology on their hemp products. And what makes this confusing, there's really no FDA terminology definition, but trade groups such as APA, the US Hemp Authority, and even states such as New York State are working hard to define these. So I wanted to talk about a few terms that you'll see on product labels and their developing industry definitions. Okay, so full spectrum. Full spectrum contains CBD, the legal amount of THC or under, and other cannabinoids such as CBG. It should also commonly include plant terpenes. Terpenes are the same thing as the naturally occurring plant essential oils, are the things that make the plant smell good or in different ways. So broad spectrum is becoming more and more common, and it's basically the same thing as full spectrum with the detectable amount of THC removed. You'll commonly see THC free on labels, and this likely means that levels are below detection limit, which is commonly quantified at under 0.05%. That's under 0.05%. Now, a non-detect THC greatly reduces the chance of failing a drug test, but this is definitely not guaranteed, so be aware. Okay, CBD isolate. It's a version of isolated CBD molecule at 98 or 99% plus purity, and it's very similar to the GW Pharma drug Epidiolex. You'll commonly see these more and more on labels, other cannabinoids such as CBG, CBC, or CBN, and each one of these cannabinoids have their own wonderful therapeutic benefits. All right, so water soluble. You may be saying to yourself, wait, how do you take a CBD oil and make it water soluble? Well, this means that the product has been structured to go into solution, thus increasing its chance of absorption through nanoparticle delivery or lipid nanoparticle processing. All right, so there are 4 general categories of non-inhalable CBD products available in the marketplace: topicals, edibles, tinctures, and capsules, and beverages. So first, let's talk about topicals. Salves, creams, and lotions are really the most common, and they come in a variety of potencies and form factors. Topicals work well, and they create a noticeable effect, and this is compared to ingestibles, which may not be felt by everyone. Topicals also carry a lower regulatory risk because they're not ingested. This is why you're more likely to see them carried in larger chain stores such as CVS or a larger drugstore. Topicals also are more easily adopted by those concerned about ingesting hemp. And this is likely due to the stigma that's been attached to cannabis for many years. So new adopters may find benefit in topicals first, allowing them to gain confidence in the category, leading to ingestible use, and thus more benefits, in my opinion. Another topical category which is interesting is the high-end beauty area, with items such as facial serum looking to disrupt this premium niche category. All right, edibles. Yum, yum, look at these. We got some Boulder caramels and some gummies. Edibles are an interesting area to watch in the CBD world because they really do appeal to a broader consumer. They're easy to use and they taste good. I mean, I'm getting hungry just looking at these. Gummies are really the most common, but we see CBD coming in other form factors such as candies or even cookies, which is wild. A CBD cookie, who would have thought? The drawbacks to edibles are they can take longer than tinctures to work, although some interesting rapid uptake technology is being developed. Okay, so tinctures or oils are very common. And on the slide, I've listed tinctures, which come in an oil, and also capsules or soft gels. So I'm going to categorize them all in one area or one slide as just oils. So tinctures or oils are very common, and they're usually just CBD distillate in an oil carrier like MCT or coconut oil. And with the soft gels, it's usually the same product with maybe a little bit of surfactant added into the soft gel. So oils, they come in a variety of potencies, and as mentioned earlier, they may be labeled in different ways, such as full spectrum. The benefits of oils is they do seem to work quicker than edibles, and the amount of CBD can be titrated per drop, so someone can start small and work their way up. The tinctures or oils come in a variety of flavors, but the drawbacks can be taste, which is why some consumers move over to capsules or soft gels. So taste can affect consumer compliance, as it's not always desirable to put an oil in your mouth. I would also like to mention that full spectrum products can result in a THC high if taken in higher doses. Trust me, I do not recommend this. Okay, so lastly is beverages. They come in a variety of options, such as bubbly water, kombucha, or sodas. This is making me thirsty looking at this wonderful picture of these bubbly beverages here. So in Colorado, these type of products are commonly found at coffee shops and natural food stores. They tend to be grab and go. So this really provides an opportunity for the consumer to ingest CBD in a way that's convenient to them. Now, these type of beverages do tend to be pricey per milligram of CBD though, about $3 to $4 for around 25 milligrams of CBD. So at the beginning of this year, there were over 3,500 CBD brands, which is a lot. This is primarily due to the low barrier of entry, because anyone with a few $1,000s can buy CBD, buy some CBD, mix it up in their kitchen, print some labels, and sell online. I definitely do not recommend this, by the way, because it's illegal. And as the market continues to consolidate, many brands continue to go out of business. So who do we trust? Who do we trust out there? My recommendation is always looking for signs of quality. Number one, screen for outlandish claims such as depression, COVID, or PTSD. If a company is not following the general rules of ethical and compliant marketing, they're likely not following good manufacturing practices. So speaking of GMPs, look for GMP certification from reputable companies like our friends at NSF or SGS. Trade association membership with an organization like APA or the US Hemp Authority seal is not required, but it does show that a company has gone above and beyond to highlight their quality. So again, you see the USHA certified there in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. That's a good way to screen for quality. If it has this seal, it means the company cares about their quality and is likely a pretty darn good product. Lastly, ask if your manufacturer is FDA registered. Every manufacturer of any type of ingestible product has to be FDA registered. If they're not, or if they give you pushback, or if they don't know what you're talking about, run to another option. There are plenty of great options. Every reputable hemp-CBD manufacturer out there is FDA registered. Okay, so there are a few sources of data which show really large CBD sales projections. So I chose a conservative number provided by Nielsen. I would like to thank you, Nielsen. Thank you, Nielsen, for providing some of the data used in my presentation today. And you can find their contact information at the bottom of the slide. I believe it's Rich Maturo. Thank you again, Rich, for providing this information. So according to Nielsen, about 19% of the US population has used CBD, with about 10% of the US population as likely regular users. Okay, so if we look forward to 2025, Nielsen projects around 27% of the population will have used CBD by then. And if we look forward with the sales projections to 2025, Nielsen projects US annual retail sales of around $7 billion for hemp CBD. This is up from a projected sales amount of 1.7 billion with a B this year. So to put this large number of the current sales projection of 1.7 billion in perspective, this is about 10 to 15% of the total US supplement marketplace for this year, which is really impressive when you think about just a few years ago, CBD sales were nearly non-existent. All right, so most people are purchasing CBD for specific therapeutic reasons, which primarily fall into three categories. Sleep, which is how I myself became familiar with CBD. Mood support, which includes relaxation and nervous states, such as anxiety. And also pain. People are purchasing CBD for pain, which can be acute, such as a pulled muscle at the gym, or for ongoing needs associated with chronic comfort. Quick disclaimer to all my regulatory colleagues out there, I'm not saying CBD is good for anxiety or good for pain. I'm just simply saying this is what consumers are purchasing it for. All right, so people are also purchasing CBD for general wellness, which I found very interesting, with no real specific intention in mind. The consumer is just purchasing CBD because they just know it's probably good for them. So I put this picture here in the middle of the slide of a bed. It looks like it's a rainbow, it's clouds, the blue sky, it's bed, and it's on a coral reef or some type of ocean. And I put this here because this is an example of the picture that I visualize as I'm going to sleep. I take my CBD, I visualize this peaceful picture, and it helps me go to sleep easier. Okay. So what is holding consumers back from purchasing? It's really no surprise that regulatory is the biggest hurdle to overcome. And the industry is really waiting on federal CBD legislation. I know Ricardo will be speaking about this in his presentation later. Again, you want to make sure you definitely check out Ricardo Carvajal's presentation about CBD and the regulatory state. So regulatory, that's the biggest one. Also geography, but this is becoming less important as most states do allow CBD sales. The exception is states like Idaho, which limit access to CBD. And I myself would be careful about traveling to Idaho with the CBD product because the rules there are a little wild, in my opinion, very limiting. So other factors which are holding back consumers from purchasing are whether CBD actually works. Is it actually good for you? Does it actually work? Well, as mentioned earlier, with so many brands, it's really difficult to know who to trust. As one bad consumer experience, perhaps from a product not having a label claim value of CBD, can potentially affect purchasing habits for that person and their network for years to come. Lack of scientific research, including safety studies, is an important factor. But companies like ValidCare, whose CEO Patrick McCarthy will be speaking tomorrow, are helping to lead the way in documenting and proving safety. So make sure you check out Patrick's presentation tomorrow, please. Okay, lastly is price. We've seen CBD prices, or the raw material of CBD, drop over 500% in the past year. But finished product costs have not really fallen at that same rate. So if we compare finished product CBD costs or prices to other herbal supplements, CBD can still be thought of as around 25 to 50% higher than other comparable herbal supplements. But I suspect that we'll likely see the price of CBD finished products continue to fall in line over the next year or two. Okay, so here we have a report from Nielsen for your future viewing pleasure. And this really highlights some of the barriers for consumers. I'm not going to go through all of it now, but feel free to look at this at home. It's really a fascinating slide. Thank you again, Nielsen. So this slide highlights some of the barriers for consumers who responded they are not likely to purchase CBD in the next 12 months. So these are the people that brands really want to go after, the new adopters. Once a consumer comes on board, they find a brand they're likely to stick with that brand. So this is really the Shangri-La of new onboarded CBD consumers. So again, FDA regulation will likely include adherence to GMPs and proving safety, which will remove some of the barriers to entry. Okay, so here are a few resources I wanted to share, and I'll drop links into the chat box. APA Alerts. APA Alerts is a great free way to stay up to date with warning letter trends and industry news. Also, I'm going to drop a link in for a CGMP Basics for Hemp-CBD webinar. It's an excellent resource and company training tool for your company as well too. Lastly, my Regulatory Hints YouTube channel is a really great free way to learn about different things such as considerations when adding Hemp-CBD with dietary supplements or reasons why you want to avoid a warning letter, to name a few. So I'll drop in a link for my free Regulatory Hints YouTube channel. It's a labor of my regulatory love. Great. So at this point, this does conclude my presentation, and I do believe we have a few minutes for Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah, so Asa, thank you very much for that presentation. As we give people an opportunity to either raise their hand or submit questions, I was just going to get us started with one. So I came across a recent paper where analysis was done of CBD products that were available for purchase. And only about a third of those products that were evaluated by the investigators actually had the amount of CBD that was claimed for the product. In the other 2/3 instances, they either had more or less CBD, which is certainly concerning to consumers. And I guess my question to you is, what do you see happening in the near future that will better assure consumers that the labeling on these products is actually accurate? And I'm not even talking about potential contaminants, just in terms of even the CBD quantity.
Yes, indeed. I love that question. I'm familiar with that study. Unfortunately, a lot of the data sets that were collected, I think, came out of a lot of the vape or kind of tobacco CBD store industry, which are, I guess, loosely known to not be as compliant as, for example, a really reputable company. So, that came out. It put a kind of a smudge on the industry. But the optimistic way to look at that is it'll help hopefully push FDA regulation forward. So when we have national legislation or legalization of hemp CBD products, companies will have to follow GMP standards, which means that they will have to have 100% or plus CBD amount at the end of their expiration date, which is commonly 2 to 3 years. And I think I had a slide on this, which touches on a lot of these important factors, which is GMP certification. If a company is going through the time and expense to get GMP certification with a company like NSF, it's very likely that the product will be at label claim. Trade association membership and USHA certification seal are also things to look for.
Great. Okay, well, we've got some questions coming in, so I'm going to read them and we'll go from there. So the first question I have from the audience is cannabis indica completely different from sativa, or does it also have CBD and THC?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'd scroll back through my slides, but I'd probably mess it up. I believe Dr. Lee may be covering this on his next presentation as well too. So cannabis, sativa, cannabis indica, these are all considered varietals or cultivars. So they could be specifically grown or tweaked to have higher CBD or higher THC. You see the sativa or the indica more used in the marijuana or regulated market, and I believe those create different effects, whereas a sativa is known, I believe, to create more of a energetic effect, whereas the indica has terpenes in it, which would create more of a calming effect. So I don't know if I answered that, but I did my best, I think.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we have somebody that's actually going to ask you a question in person. Brent Kobelish. Let me unmute you. And let's see.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I was busy typing my question in there. I apologize. Asa, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Asa, thank you so much for the informative presentation you just gave. It was great. My question is around U.S. regulatory compliance. I realize there are state-by-state mandates, and no doubt, given the past week, I'm sure there's more to come on the scene with regards to allowances or lack thereof in certain states, et cetera. But the federal government hasn't, and more specifically, the FDA hasn't approved this as a food additive. So when I see uses in sodas, bubbly water, these types of things, aren't these companies afraid that they may be subject to warning letters by the US FDA? And how do they, when you talk to these companies, how do they go about that risk assessment from a regulatory standpoint?
Right. Yeah. So if people are, that's a great question, Brett. Thank you for that. So as companies are looking to get in or stay in the hemp CBD marketplace, I do a risk assessment. If a company has zero risk tolerance, then they should not get in this industry at all. So, if you follow the buy the book rules, are you allowed to put CBD in a beverage and a tincture and a cookie? I'd say that's not likely. But we're at this really interesting time. This is an inflection point in our industry. So the cat's out of the bag, or the wine's out of the bottle, or whatever saying you want to use. So consumer demand is demanding CBD, and that's driving a lot of the companies to take some regulatory risk by manufacturing products with CBD. Now, I love warning letters. So I'm glad you brought that up. I literally read every single one of them. My silly joke that I like to say is that it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm sitting on the couch, and my wife comes out and she says, "What are you doing?" And I say, "Honey, I'm reading FDA warning letters," because I really do like it. So I basically read every one of them. And I believe all FDA warning letters, except for one, had to do with a company selling and marketing a CBD product, but then also making claims. So if a CBD company is going to take some regulatory risk, then they should be very, very sensitive about any claims they make on their website, but increasingly on their social medias. That includes social media platforms, that includes Instagram, Facebook. For example, if someone puts something on your Facebook wall and you liked it, that'd be the same thing as substantiated claim. So it's not without risk. And, a lot of people use the speed limit analogy. If the speed limit for CBD is 20 miles, 0 miles an hour, then a lot of companies are driving around 20 miles an hour, but those companies that are driving 50 miles an hour may be making these outlandish claims. I don't know if that kind of answered your question.
No, that's a great explanation, and gives me some context as to how they're going about making their decisions on these. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, and please do invite everyone to connect with me if you've got follow-up questions. This is, as I mentioned, a labor regulatory love, and always happy to be of any help and support if I can.
Okay, we've got a couple of other written questions that have come in, so I'm going to read those. One says, can you comment on the availability of clinical efficacy studies supporting the effectiveness of these products?
That's a great one. Well, with a product for example, once CBD becomes regulated as a dietary supplement, which I believe it will, and that's APA guidance is to treat it like any other herb and treat it like a dietary supplement that allows you to have process control. Now, under dietary supplement regulations, you're not ever allowed to make a drug claim. I wouldn't be able to say that my CBD is good for anxiety. Under dietary supplement regulations, you're allowed to make some type of structure function claims. And so some of these studies that are being conducted now are efficacy, are mood support type studies. And the reason why I have to say that I feel like there's quite a bit of research, and I think there'll be lots of presentations on this over the 2-day symposium. There's a lot of clinical studies happening, but the reason why people can't use those studies to highlight their product is there's no really framework for using the structure function pathway for a CBD product right now, but I expect more and more companies to come out with this. So a company, again, just to kind of sum it up, a company, if they're going through the structure function process, they might be able to say, eventually, if they can prove it, that my CBD product helps a healthy night's sleep. But they wouldn't be able to say ever that their product helps insomnia because that's a drug claim.
Okay, I've got one more question here. Question asks, are you aware of any CBD companies that are currently operating an FDA registered and regulated facility?
Yeah, great question. I love that. Every reputable CBD company is operating under an FDA registered facility. And that, I can say that I have no skin in the game, but, companies like, Charlotte's Web or CV Sciences or Elixinol, very big brands. They're all FDA registered. And that's just kind of the most basic entry requirement for being a manufacturer of any type of product. And I'll just kind of, as a side comment, Norm, as a side comment, I'll say that just because there's not any clear FDA regulation for how CBD should be manufactured or marketed doesn't mean that everyone should just not follow any rules and go home and go to sleep. So in lieu of clear FDA legislation, I think it's really important for companies to follow dietary supplement regulations, and part of that is FDA food facility registration.
Great. I have one last question, so I'll use my moderator's prerogative here. I'm just curious, I know that you've mentioned quite a few different types of products that are currently available. When you kind of look into your crystal ball, do you see any emerging CBD products that have not yet come on the market, but look like they may? Are there any specific areas that you see?
I love that question. Being that I am from the Silicon Valley of natural product innovation, I really, myself and our colleagues here, we like to have our finger on the pulse of what's new and what's exciting. Now, I've spent the majority of my career focusing on increased bioavailability delivery for nutraceuticals, vitamin C, different herbs, CoQ10, things like that. So as we look to what's next on the horizon in the hemp CBD market, bioavailability is going to be a huge one. So companies finding a way to get more with less CBD. How do you increase the uptake? How do you increase the rapidness of the uptake? And that comes in a liposomal or lipid nanoparticle delivery, or as mentioned, some of these increased uptake technologies that are going into edibles. So yeah, bioavailability is going to be key, and I expect to see more of that as the industry matures.
Great, great. Well, Asa, thank you so much for that presentation and kicking off our symposium. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day, all.
Thank you. All right, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Jinpeng Li. So Dr. Li is an assistant professor in the Center for Research on Ingredient Safety at Michigan State University. His areas of expertise are immunotoxicology and hepatotoxicology. Dr. Li also directs the CRIS Research Laboratory. We've invited Dr. Li to give us an introduction to cannabinoids as well as CBD, again, to kind of set the stage for this two-day symposium. So with that, Dr. Li, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Nora, for the introduction. Can you see the slide?